My first memory of moving to the UK was stepping off the plane at Heathrow Airport. The air had a funny smell. That's the first thing I remembered.
The first day I arrived, I still remember it was like a grey, dull June day, and I came out and thinking, this is a miserable day, and just like I felt totally out of place. Just wanted to run back home to my mum.
It is just like a human story about leaving everything you know and an entire family and culture behind to start new somewhere else. And that's not easy. And I think it's easy to forget that when you see things in the media about like people wanting to build walls to stop immigrants and that sort of thing. That was my aim, I guess, is to show like a human side of it rather than the negative stuff that you see.
With all six of us, the family, that's my mum, dad, myself, my sister, brother and sister. So that's in order. Going down to the immigration where we had to go through medical tests. They were trying to screen us for tuberculosis because a lot of people who came from tropical countries like we did had risk of that tuberculosis. And the next memory I have is driving through the streets of London. A lot of it was these residential terraced houses. I couldn't believe just how long the roads were and how many just all blended into one. My parents moved here just really because of the opportunities for us to get an English education, which was perceived to be the best in the world. When I started school, everybody used to make fun of me, and they used to mimic me. They used to say, "Oh, Joseph, do you want to know how you talk?" And I'd say, "What?" And they say, "Oh, don't you want to know how we talk?" And they would make fun of me. I went quiet for quite a few months until I started to pick it up and firstly start to understand the nuances of the pronunciation, and then I started to talk like that. So I became like that. That probably wiped out a lot of the memories. And then going into the school playground, and the school bully come up and asked me something, and I was leaning back against a wall, and he flicked my legs up in the air so that I landed on my backside. And he made some racist remark, I think. Teachers would call, my nicknames were Orinoco, Gangadin, Delhi. Where's your elephant, Delhi? The worst racist experience I encountered growing up was really dealing with skinheads when the skinhead thing started in England. And it was in the papers all the time that they used to go around packy bashing. That was the trend with skinheads. And gangs of them, we would go around, find some individual and basically kick them in. I mean, a whole gang would all crowd around somebody and just kick them in with their steel toe-cap Dr. Martin boots, which was the big thing. So I was always worried about that. I remember speaking to my careers teacher and saying I wanted to study medicine, and he just laughed hysterically, which was so negative and really heartbreaking, really. And he said, well, no, you can go and do an apprenticeship, become a carpenter or a bricklayer or something like that. And nobody ever got grades that were good enough to get into college. My school was just terrible. That was regardless of race. The distinctive thing that I noticed, I remember, was walking down the street and seeing a large bar of Cadbury's chocolate that had bite marks in it, and it was just chucked on the road. And kids were like that. And I remember when we were in Africa, it was very difficult to get Cadbury's chocolate anyway, or any chocolate. So we really treasured it. And I used to think, what a waste. I just couldn't believe it.
So which house is it?
So it's the third house along here, number 38. That's where we were. We lived through all our teenage years. And my dad bought the house for £4,500. And I think it's worth over £1 million now.
Really?
You wouldn't believe it. Fortune. Yeah, we used to play football in the corner. Here, there was the house down in the corner where we would play football. much to the annoyance of the neighbours. But in those days, things were different. Kids used to be out in the street a lot.
Was this the first place that you came?
Yeah, this was where we came literally off the boat, if you like, but it was off the car. And we stayed here, and we were in the top floor. And I remember looking out of that window, and my first impressions of England, and just watching people go by, and it was all very strange. Seeing all these white people, that was very, very strange. It was strange because I missed my friends from back in school, and not knowing what the future was going to bring, not knowing how things were going to work out.
I moved to the UK in 1985, just a month after I got married. I came with my husband and his family. We were all coming back together after the wedding in India. The first few days were okay because I was with my husband's mum and dad. One of the things my mum said to his mum was that make sure that she stays with you for a little bit because she'll be very homesick. They were very kind to me, so I was very lucky. And we also spoke the same language, so that was also one of the things that helped me settle in. First year we were together, I was studying, he was working, so it was only one person's income. So all of the expenses, the mortgage, the living expense, everything had to be paid by one person. I still remember being terrified of answering phones because I couldn't understand the accent. There are times when I remember all the houses looked the same. So I used to be terrified of going out thinking, what if I don't know how to get back? When I moved to the flat, that was when I was really, really depressed. But only when I was on my own. And I still remember we had 2 bedrooms, but in our bedroom we had our bed and the TV. So we used to lie down and watch TV, and I'd be like, I'd kind of click my finger as I do. That irritates you as well. And then he'd ask me, oh, what's wrong? And I'd be like, oh, I'm thinking about my amma. I want to be with my amma. And so...
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hug.
Sorry.
I was very nervous for many reasons, because firstly of the feeling of isolation that she might have, and going back to my own memories of how we felt, of wanting to avoid her having those feelings.
Joseph was very, very, very thoughtful and very kind, and he managed to get the telephone number and the area code and the international code. And I still remember we had a stopwatch, and it was like £1.50 in those days. I think his wages were like £200 a week or something, and it was £1.50 a minute to call.
Oh my God.
Yeah, to call India. So we called, and I used to talk for 3 minutes. And that would be like, just go by so quickly. And so that was like once a month we would call. And then everything else was by letter.
The early stages were difficult for her because she was lonely and she was again vulnerable and isolated. And this was a common problem that anybody felt who had got married to someone who was removed from their culture and the people they'd grown up with and gone to a different country.
I was thinking that even, your dad saying that you didn't teach the children our language. Now, when I look back, I think I didn't have time. I mean, even now, I feel like time I spend with you is something that I still treasure. What I thought would happen was I would stay at home and look after the kids and my husband would go to work. It actually was the opposite. But I still think that I missed out a lot. And if I was given another opportunity, I probably would have preferred to stay and look after the kids.
I told you that the high thing is a high on both.
Yeah. Do it quickly, yes, because I think it's getting, yeah.
How much?
No.
More?
Yeah. Yeah.
When did you first go back to India after you moved here?
87, so 2 years after I came here.
Okay.
You know, your expectations are different. So when you know you're growing up thinking that this is what you have to do, you move away, you don't see your parents for 3 years or something, and then it's kind of, you accept it even though it's painful.
I remember you said you used to like sit with your mum and now I've cooked from really learn how to cook for a while because I've only started like now.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, I'm grateful that I learned to cook because it's also being independent and not relying on anyone else to. So.
I think I take for granted like being here and having you guys here and stuff.
People don't realize is that we do enrich their lives too.
Yeah.
Would they have known about papadums and biryanis and all of the stuff? Or rice?
To be where I am now and have lived here my whole life and not really think about my heritage or my Indianness and just think, oh yeah, I'm British and that's it, and not think about the added complication of I'm not English, this isn't my country.
But I realise how I've changed over the years, how I am more a Londoner than I am from my hometown.
I spent most of my life here, so I'm English in many ways, but I still think of myself as being basically an Indian.
I mean, I can go back and live in India, but the only thing I probably would struggle with is the patriarchy. Some of the things I didn't like was because in India was because you're a girl, you have a different kind of, you have to be at, cooking and helping or whatever, and the boys could do whatever they want. And as I said, I was rebellious and I hated that. So because of that, I didn't actually have any preconceived ideas about how my children, my girls, should be brought up.
Knowing what I know now, I think that I would have been more successful if I'd gone to India in terms of my education. I think it would have had its own problems, but I wouldn't have had to deal with the blatant racism that I had to deal with. There is that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I am what I am because of the experiences I've had. I
miss my family a lot more than I did maybe because you guys were growing up and I had all of the other distractions, but now I'm realizing that, you guys are going to move out and I'm going to be on my own, just the two of us. Ideally, I would like to have the best of both worlds. So if I had my family here, I would be quite happy.
It's a conversation that I never had with my parents until now, until this documentary, and I'm 20. And I think if it can help other second-generation immigrants to think about where their parents came from and stuff like that, then hopefully it brings them close to their families as well.